Are you looking for ways to stop being dependent upon Amazon for your author earnings income? Are you hoping to expand and grow your sales on multiple platforms in global territories? Do you need strategies to help you get started now in terms of creating a successful publish-wide author plan? Would you like to increase and optimize your sales on Apple Books, Kobo, Nook, Google Play, and more? Then this episode, the top 10 tips for going wide, is for you.
Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Hello, Reflectives, and welcome to episode 144 of the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. This is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre. This episode features an article from USA Today bestselling author Aaron Wright. Aaron has worked in virtually every job under the sun, including library director, barista, teacher, website designer, and ranch hand, helping brand cattle before settling into the career she's always dreamed about, author. Aaron is also the founder of the Wide for the Win group and movement on Facebook. And in this episode, I'll be sharing a slightly truncated version of an awesome article that she recently posted on the Hidden Gems website. Why? Because it's an amazing top 10 tips for going wide. If you've read it, perhaps this audio version will be a good refresher. And if you haven't yet read it, then listener, you're in for a treat. That's coming up later in this episode, but first I'm going to get to some comments from recent episodes. From episode 143, Unstoppable Goals with HB Line, Amy Tasakata says, "A part of me wants to comment how awesome it is that you can just get a COVID test. I'm in Texas, and a lot of people are still having a hard time getting them. I had friends that are essential workers and were told that since they don't have a fever that they couldn't get a test, even though they had a cough and other symptoms. Sigh. Disappointment doesn't even begin to express how I feel about how the U.S. government is not handling it." Thanks, Amy. Amy is referring to me talking about going for a COVID-19 test because of some symptoms I'd been having that ended up being food poisoning. Thanks for that, Amy. I do feel for so many of my friends down in the U.S., particularly in troubled states like Texas, where it's kind of gotten quite a bit out of hand. Amy goes on to say, "Yay, goal setting," in relation to the main topic of that episode. She says, "I'm a big goal setter too. Love that there's more books out there on goal setting for people to read. One of my goals remaining for 2020 is to finish my newest newsletter book. It's a gay Yatza romance book that's a one-night stand to something more and deals with pachinko parlors." Wow, Amy, I hope I pronounced all of those words properly. That is quite intriguing. So I'm assuming that you're talking about this as a newsletter book, meaning that this is something specifically, if people sign up for your newsletter, it's going to be a special treat that only they get. That's awesome, and obviously very niche. So that's kind of a cool thing. Is the one night stand? Is that more of a reference to this as a one-off, or is that some sort of cheeky joke related to the romance? Anyways, thanks so much for that comment, Amy. Chad Boyer also comments on that same episode and says, "I was thinking the same thing as Amy regarding just walking in and getting the COVID test, though that is more spread out here in California if you're exhibiting symptoms. Glad it was just a scare and not the actual virus." Chad goes on to say, "I like how HB realized her series was targeted wrong and took a step back to remarket it to the right audience. Knowing that the series is good and is just off target is a good perception to stop one from throwing good money after bad in terms of marketing." Yeah, couldn't agree more. I love that about what Holly shared in that episode. Chad goes on to say, "When I started writing more seriously, I read Chris Fox's book 5,000 Words an Hour. The title says it all, though he suggests with 5-minute sprints to start. This is where I start, and whenever I lose my way and realize it has been a week since I've written, I reset with that goal. I schedule out 5-minute sprints to get me going again. Sometimes that is where I stay for a month while chaos is happening, but I build back up as I go. Love that, Chad. Thanks for sharing that. I love that you're not expecting too much. You're like, okay, 5 minutes. Let's see what we can get done in a 5-minute period. That seems like a digestible chunk, and it's not too much of investment. And if you get something done, great. And if you didn't, then it was only 5 minutes. I love that strategy. Thanks for sharing. So thank you, Chad, and thank you, Amy, for sharing your comments on episode 144 over at starkreflections.ca. Just wanted to remind listeners that you shouldn't miss out on your chance to win a copy of Holly Lynn's goal setting for writers just by commenting on episode 143. There will be a random draw for all commenters. I'd love to hear comments about your own goals and goal setting and things that are related to that. That could be fun to share with other listeners to the show, just like Amy and Chad shared. Also, all patrons of this podcast will be entered in a chance to win a second copy of the book. Now, this goal setting for writers will be one copy randomly sent to commenters, one copy randomly sent to patrons. This is patrons who are automatically entered just for being patrons over at patreon.com/starkreflections. And the way this is going to work is it'll be a random draw, and then I'm going to find out from you your favorite local bookstore, and I'm going to order the book in through that local bookstore for you to either pick up curbside, drop ship, however they do it. And then that way we can support both an awesome author, Holly, as well as you, an awesome author, the winner of the prize, and of course an awesome local bookstore to you, or however it is easier, depending on where you are in the world. And you have until the end of day on Friday, July 31st, midnight, I suppose, local time. I'll be doing the draw, and we'll be announcing it in the following week's podcast. And now time for a word from this episode's sponsor. This episode is sponsored by Findaway Voices. As of June 2nd, 2020, all of your giveaway codes from Findaway Voices now work in the United Kingdom and the European Union. Previously, giveaway codes only worked in the US, Canada, and Australia. Now, giveaway codes can be redeemed by listeners in dozens of countries throughout Europe, as well as the US, Canada, and Australia. And good news, there's nothing that you need to do. All your existing codes will now work everywhere automatically. There's no need to generate new codes or juggle and track separate codes for separate territories. Every giveaway code works universally, even if you received it a long time ago. Remember to check the Giveaway Codes tab in your Findaway Voices project to download your codes or to generate them for a new book. You'll also be able to see which codes have already been redeemed and when. Listeners who redeem your giveaway code, listen to the audiobook in the Authors Direct app, which is available in the iOS App Store and the Google Play Store. This is just one of many features available to authors who use Findaway Voices, and if you're looking for ways that you can leverage Findaway Voices as an author, go ahead and check them out over at starkreflections.ca/Findaway. In terms of a personal update, it's actually been a pretty busy time period for me. I got the audio back on the Canadian Werewolf in New York novel from Scott Overton, who had done the 10,000 words short story this time around, and it also created the audiobook for me for Stowaway, which is book 1.5 in the series. And listening to that, going through and listening to it, going back through the manuscript was actually incredibly inspiring for me. I started working on the character of Michael Andrews and that whole universe back in 2006, or prior to that, actually. And I don't know what it was, but that whole experience of listening to Scott read the character and going through the whole process of being in Michael's head for that long, for hours at a time, getting up really, really early before the workday started and working on that, and then coming back to it later in the day, really invigorated me. I actually got all of that work done. And so here's kind of the plan that I have. I've got the new covers that I just purchased for the entire Canadian Werewolf series, including several books that aren't even written yet. And I've gone ahead and uploaded the new covers to This Time Around and Canadian Werewolf in New York. They're now live on all the major retail sites. I've then also done the trade paperback of This Time Around, which I'd never created before, and that's on its way through Draft to Digital Print. And I'm using Ingram Spark to do a case-bound hardcover, which is also in process and sort of in publishing status. Then I did Canadian Werewolf in New York, so I had the proofread copy done. So I've got the audiobook now coming out with the new cover for the ebook, the revised trade paperback version with the new cover, the new artwork from Juan Pedron, and again, the hardcover, the case-bound hardcover that I'm doing of that. Then I actually put up Stowaway for pre-order, which is completely done. Got the audio finished, got the trade paperback done, the ebook done. They're all listed and published for pre-order. They're coming out on August 18th, 2020. I'm hoping that the audiobook gets there on time for that release date. Yes, it was ready to go now, but I wanted to do the release date so that I can sort of officially announce all of those formats and then maybe do some marketing and promotion on that, which I'll talk about and share the details of. And that's been done, but then I thought, while I was in the midst of it, because I was so inspired, Fear and Longing in New York, book 2, full-length book, because Stowaway is only about 20,000-ish words, maybe a little bit more. And Fear and Longing in New York, which is book 2, I actually put up for pre-order. I set the pre-order date for February 23rd, 2021, and I published it. I put the ebook out, at least, on that as pre-order. Set it up assetless pre-order for Draft to Digital, but then I used dummy files for Amazon and for Kobo, KDP and Kobo Writing Life. And then that way I can kind of get that out into the world, so at least people can see that there are 3 books in that series, with the 4th one coming, which will be another one of the shorter stories, probably 10, 15,000 words. But I've been in the world and motivated, and I realized I've got to just commit and get this done, because I need that deadline, I need that tension. And so after months and months and months, well, actually years of procrastinating on Fear and Longing in New York, and months of struggling, so frustrated, like so many of us have been doing during the pandemic times, because let's be honest, we're all still dealing with combinations of grief and stress and anxiety and all the unknowns that are hitting us, that it's no wonder that so many authors are having trouble, and I've been having trouble committing, and I was working on other creative projects, but it seemed that, investing the money and getting Scott to do the book, and then sitting down and just digging into it and just being immersed in that world really inspired me for more. Liz and I then went on a 2-day camping trip, and it was great to be disconnected. I was just reading for pleasure, listening to audiobooks while we were walking, and just enjoying being out there in front of the fire, and that really helped me soak it up. I talked over with Liz some of the details of what I was thinking about, and it just allowed me to recharge and refresh. So I'm proud to say, after long last, I finally got a few of those things done. And that kind of relates to the next thing, which is a nonfiction book project. And so Erin Wright is not the guest of this episode. I know she's hopefully going to be a guest on a future episode of the podcast, but I wanted to share that article from Wide for the Win. I also reached out to Erin. So Erin had originally planned on publishing the book Wide for the Win, and I spoke with her about that when she decided not to publish that book, and I got her permission to do that book. So I've set up the cover for Wide for the Win, and I'm going to be setting it up for pre-order. Most likely, I think probably in the February 2021 timeframe as well. And I'm also soliciting stories for Wide for the Win from authors who have had success from Wide. There are plenty of authors who've already shared some amazing experiences on the Wide for the Win Facebook group, of which I will be contacting and seeing if it's okay for me to talk about what they've done, because I think it's a great example of how they've leveraged maybe Nook or Google Play or Kobo or any of the other platforms. But then I also have a forum that anyone who wants to share stories of how they've done well, and yes, we'll include Amazon, but I'm hoping more, because every other book in the universe is just about Amazon all the time. I want this to be more about, Amazon is included, but there's all the other places, and in particular other places. So if you have any tips that you're interested in sharing, you can come over to starkreflections.ca for episode 144, and there's a form where you can share some information that you may allow me to use in the book. And so that's another project that I'm going to go full force on, because what I think is important is I'm working on Canadian Werewolf when my brain's in a certain mindset, but then working on Wide for the Win, working on like nonfiction, can potentially be a benefit, because if I'm feeling not motivated or blocked or whoever you want to think about it on the fiction project, I can jump over to the nonfiction. And sometimes it's just that different area of the brain that you're using allows you to kind of keep moving forward and making forward momentum. And again, I want to get that pre-order up relatively soon so that I can actually have something that I have to basically commit to and finish. So it's been a relatively productive several days. One of the things I did notice is in the last week or so, since I've been concentrating on all of this writing work, I've wasted so much less time on social media. I kind of miss it. I kind of miss the engagement and the interactivity, because it's those endorphin, when people like or comment on the things that you're posting. So I kind of miss that, but I'm now thinking more in the long run. Investing more of that time in some of these longer term projects as a writer, as a storyteller, and that's really, really cool. So I thought I would share that in this personal update. But that's enough for the personal update. Why don't we get right into this article, which, as I mentioned previously, is a slightly truncated version of the article, and I'll have a link to the full article over for the episode 144 on starkreflections.ca, so you can actually read the full article. And then, of course, I'll also have a link to the Facebook group, Wide for the Win. Top 10 Tips to Going Wide by Aaron Wright, June 26, 2020. Introductory paragraph. We've been hearing from more and more authors lately that are cutting the cord, so to speak, stepping away from KU exclusivity for one reason or another in order to test the waters by going wide, which simply means selling their book across all or most of the digital storefronts instead of just Amazon. Aaron Wright went wide back in 2016 and has never looked back, which is why she's perfectly suited to provide you with the tips for how to change your way of Amazon-centric thinking and prepare to bring your work to a much wider audience. Howdy, y'all. Waving. I'm Aaron Wright, a USA Today best-selling author. I write contemporary Western romance and am a dedicated wide author. Although I didn't start out as a wide author, I quickly became one as Amazon went through one upheaval after another, stripping page reads from authors, shutting down accounts without warning, and in general being the massive gorilla in the room, willing and able to stomp any author's career to pieces at the drop of a hat. Being completely dependent on them seemed like the quick road to insanity, so I went wide at the end of 2016 and haven't looked back since. One quick graph, just so you can be sure that I know what I'm talking about, and then we'll dive into some tips. The graph shows Amazon's percentage of my overall income. As you can see, it started out fairly high, but over time, it's been slowly but surely dropping, until now, a little less than half of my income comes from Amazon. I am the primary breadwinner in my family, and I don't have another source of income. Writing is how I support my family. So I'm not making $300 a month and telling you how you should also. I'm making a living wage doing this, and without a single page read to my name for a couple of years now. Ready to learn? Let's go. Number 1. Stop jumping in and out of KU like a kangaroo hopped up on sugar. You might think that this will help you increase your sales or page reads or whatever, but what it ends up doing is making everyone upset with you. KU readers get used to getting your books via KU and are now upset that they can't every time you pull them to go wide. Wide readers get used to being able to buy your books on their preferred storefront and are now upset that they can't every time you pull them and go into KU. Wide storefronts take one look at your record, in, out, and wonder why they should waste their precious audience on you, and instead pick another author to promote in-house who's been consistently wide for years. And if you think they aren't paying attention to things like that, you're deluding yourself. They absolutely do. Amazon and Google Play don't, but Apple, Kobo, and B&N do. It plays a significant part in their decisions of which authors to include in their in-house promos. Pick a lane and stick in it. for at least a year, if not for the rest of eternity. You'll be so much better off for it. Promise. 2. Stop giving away Amazon gift cards or Kindle e-readers. When you give away prizes that work for all storefronts, not just Amazon. When I give away gift cards, I give away a $15 gift card every single week in my newsletter. I let my readers choose from any of the 5 major storefronts: Amazon, Apple, Barnes & Noble, Google Play, or Kobo. This tells my wide readers that they matter. Instead of saying you only count if you get your books from Amazon, you're saying every one of my readers matters to me, and that means you too, Google Play reader. This makes a difference to them, I promise, and it also makes a difference to the wide storefronts. Again, do you think they don't notice when you run a big promo on Facebook and the grand prize is a $500 gift card to Amazon? I promise they do. And the next time they go to pick an author for a specific promo, are they going to pick you? I doubt it. Oh, and I only give away iPads, Nooks, or Kobos when I give away an e-reader as a prize. I never give away a Kindle. There are enough Kindles in the world. I don't need to add to the number. Number 3. Stop advertising in paid newsletters that only include Amazon links. This is one of the reasons why I love Hidden Gems, by the way. They're one of the good guys who link to all storefronts, not just Amazon. I've been using Hidden Gems as a way to reach new readers for years now and have never been disappointed by their results. I've actually unsubscribed from author newsletters from paid newsletter companies where they only link to Amazon, and dropped them a quick note before I did so explaining why I was unsubscribing. I will no longer pay for an advertisement in a newsletter where they only link to Amazon, period. I've also emailed companies that link to multiple storefronts and have told them that I appreciate that and that I pay attention to that fact. If they're reconsidering this policy in the future, I want them to know that I'm specifically using them because they allow me to link to all storefronts. And maybe this will cause them to choose to keep in the links to all storefronts. It doesn't hurt anyway. Number 4. Stop linking to just Amazon. On Facebook, in the description of a book trailer on YouTube, or on any other social media platform. People get frustrated by looking at an ad for a book and thinking, hey, that looks great. And then when they click, they're brought straight to Amazon. This means that either they take the time to look the book up on their preferred storefront, not likely, or they just click away, that sale lost forever. Stop making your wide readers work harder to make a purchase than Amazon readers have to. Number 5. Stop buying your books on Amazon. I know this sounds slightly insane, but it can be done, I promise. This has all sorts of bennies connected to it. You're no longer supporting an entity with your dollars that is actively hurting authors every day, and you're using another storefront regularly, which means that you learn how that storefront works. Instead of only paying attention to how Amazon works, you're learning the bestseller charts of the other storefronts. You're learning their marketing strategies. You're learning how their search engine works. All of this gives you an edge when it comes to gaining new readers on that platform. If moving your business to another storefront seems just this side of nuts, and there's simply no way you'd be willing to do it, at least take the step of canceling KU. Cancel Prime. Quit your Audible subscription. Stop supporting Amazon through subscriptions to their services. I used to have KU, Prime, and Audible credits every month. I now have none of them. It can be done. 6. Stop cross-promoting with other authors who are KU exclusive. Everyone knows it. KU readers are not loyal. If a reader found you through KU and then you stop offering your books through that program, they won't start buying your books, at least not at the $4.99 price point. They might buy your books if you run them on a super sale, but otherwise, they're dead weight on your newsletter list. Not all subscribers are created equal, and you only want the ones who are willing to pay the higher prices. Not to mention that if you promote an author in your newsletter who is in KU, you're telling your wide readers once again that they don't matter. I will not advertise an author in my newsletter who is exclusive. Period. I don't care how good of a friend that author is. I just won't do it. I refuse to tell my wide readers that they aren't worth thinking or worrying about. Number 7. Stop targeting KU authors in your ads. Again, this brings in the wrong audience. Only ever target wide authors. I will target someone who has part of their books in KU and part of them wide, but never someone who is all in with KU. This is true no matter what platform I'm advertising on, Facebook, AMS, or BookBub ads. 8. Stop spending money on AMS ads. Try not to have a heart attack with this one. LOL. I'm being serious. Use Facebook or BookBub ads. They both allow you to target a wide audience. I get Amazon clicks, I get wide storefront clicks. I get them all. Instead of spending my money to grow my audience on one specific storefront, a storefront I personally cannot stand, I spend my money growing my audience on all storefronts. Number 9. Stop having an art team that only reviews on Amazon. As a wide author, you want reviews everywhere. Readers on Barnes & Noble or Google Play want to know that your book is awesome before they click buy, just as much as a reader on Amazon wants to know this. When I add new readers to my ARC team, I will only add readers who will review on at least 2 storefronts. And it can be any 2 storefronts that they want. They can review on Apple Books and Kobo, or Amazon and Google Play, whatever combination works for them. If a reader currently only gets their books from Amazon, that's okay. It's free to set up an account on all other storefronts, although do bear in mind that you need an Apple ID to review on Apple Books. But none of the other storefronts have a $50 minimum purchase amount before people can review there, like Amazon does. So, I tell potential ARC readers to pick another storefront, set up a free account there, and review. I don't care which one, but they do have to pick one. And later on, if that reader is thinking about switching away from Amazon to a new storefront, do you think they'll be more likely to pick that secondary storefront? You betcha. They've spent months or even years at that point writing reviews on it. That increased comfort level will play a big part in their choice. 10. Stop trying to learn from authors who are KU exclusive. There are authors who choose to teach classes, run Facebook groups, or even write books to help their fellow authors, and they have their own biases, just like everyone else. They might say that their books or classes or groups are applicable to all authors, but the strategies for success on wide storefronts is so diametrically different from succeeding on Amazon that this is quite literally not possible. Stop reading or learning from sources that are focused on the wrong thing. It's like trying to learn how to become a vegetarian by taking a paleo cooking class. It's just not gonna work. If you can't tell, being wide is as much of a mental shift as anything else. It simply isn't enough to throw your books up on wide storefronts and call it good. If you're putting your books up on all storefronts, but otherwise running AMS ads, giving away Kindle readers, linking to Amazon and social media or posts in all your newsletters, and collaborating with a bunch of other KU authors, well, don't be surprised when your wide sales never really take off. One last thought. Wide sales don't take a long time to build up, at least compared to Amazon. But they also take a long time to die down. At least compared to Amazon. Amazon is your bipolar friend. A lot of fun when they're up and a whole lot of no fun at all when they're down. Wide sales will stay a lot more steady over the long run, although, of course, they also go up and down. The swings simply aren't as wild in either direction. So when your sales are slow to take off on the wide storefronts, keep plugging away. Make sure that you're wide in more than just name. And don't give up after a week or a month of poor sales. The sales will come, I promise. As long as you actually follow the tips outlined above. I hope this helped. If you'd like to start collaborating and learning from other authors who are also wide, be sure to check out the Facebook group Wide for the Win. We have over 1,000 authors in our group now, and we're getting bigger by the day. We've also got reps from a wide variety of companies that are on hand if you have questions, including Draft Digital, Smashwords, Hidden Gems, Ingram Spark, Google Play, and lots more. We're the largest wide-centric group on Facebook. But there's always room for more, I promise. One of the things that I find most fascinating about the article is the top 10 tips that Aaron shares are pretty comprehensive, pretty useful, but pretty straightforward, and they all follow a basic premise. And the premise is, stop making assumptions, stop only thinking about the world's largest bookstore. I'll give you an example. In the main episode notes when I was talking about the prize, getting a copy of Holly Lane's goal-setting book for writers, it would be easy for me to just drop ship from Amazon. And that may be the choice that an author that wins is going to prefer, but I've done previous prizes before where I found a local bookstore to where the author lives and, was able to arrange ordering the book for the author through the local bookstore. And so again, it requires pausing, reflecting, and not just assuming, not just saying, okay, Amazon's everywhere, so I'm just going to use them, but actually recognizing that there are other opportunities and other options available. Again, if you're the winner and you have a favorite local bookstore, why wouldn't I want to help you support that? Because really, it doesn't take me that much more work Sure, I already have an Amazon account. They have my credit card. I can log in, click, point, and click, and it's done. Whereas going onto a independent bookstore that I've never worked with before requires creating a new account, etc. But I think you need to be willing to move beyond those basic assumptions. I think you need to be able to move beyond the very simplistic and easy, because that's how you get stuck in a rut. That's how that just continues to grow without giving other opportunities a try. I'll give you an example from my personal life. I have long been, even before craft beer was a big thing, I've long been a fan of finding local beer. So it wasn't called craft beer back then, but I remember in the early days of traveling, and this goes back, 15, 20 years ago, when I went to a new city, I would actually ask, well, what's brewed locally? Now, I wasn't asking if they had a microbrewer or a craft brewer, because that wasn't really a known thing. It was just local, and whatever was local, I would want to try it, because I always thought, well, if it's made locally, then maybe I can only get it here in this town. I can't get it anywhere else. And it was always interesting for me to try. It's similar to traveling and going to a local mom and pop pizza shop instead of a pizza chain, because you're going to get a slightly different recipe and different sauces and different spices, just different ways that they make them. And you get the opportunity to experience something new and dynamic and interesting. And so for me, because I traveled a lot, that was a beer thing. Now, obviously, it's become a bigger thing where a lot more people are into it because it's hipster and whatever. I tend to want to avoid the things that are cool and popular, but I've long been a fan of craft beer, so I continue to do that. I can continue to try to get something that I can get locally, as opposed to, you can walk into virtually any bar and order a Coors or a Budweiser or one of those popular beers, because like Amazon, they're easy and they have a crap ton of money, and they spend a lot of money on sponsorship and providing all kinds of perks to those bars in order to carry their products from one of the major distributors, as opposed to the harder to get stuff that's from a local independent craft brewer. So it's not all that different when you stop making the assumption and stop assuming everyone does this or everyone does that, and you actually open yourself up to being able to see that there are other opportunities, that there are other platforms, that there are other countries, that there are other people who read in different ways. And so being wide isn't just publishing Amazon versus everywhere else, but it's making your books available in as many of the formats as possible, so that however a person prefers to read or consume, they have that opportunity, that they're not locked in to say, oh no, I'm sorry, it's only an ebook, you can't get it in print. But what if you're a print book reader and that's all you're going to read? Well, you're going to lose that customer. So when I think of wide, I think of wide in the grand sense of wide, meaning multiple formats, even multiple options for publishing. Some books I publish traditionally and other books I self-publish or indie publish. And I honestly believe each book has its own unique path that I'm open to, because I'm open to publishing wide. Again, if you have any tips for publishing wide, go ahead and share them here on episode 144 of the podcast. You can, of course, click on the link to the form, Wide for the Win, where you can share more detailed insights that I can incorporate potentially into the Wide for the Win book, talking about great strategies that authors have been using, because everyone's done something a little different and unique, and I know I can learn so much from other writers, and I'm looking forward to being able to incorporate a whole bunch of ideas from a bunch of different people on what they've done to find success on different platforms. One last note before I end this episode. I was listening back as I was cleaning up and editing some of the mistakes, like sometimes the dog walks into the room or I clear my throat. And I realized in the pre-show, the pre-main show, the introductory, when I was doing my personal update, I realized I called Fear and Longing in Los Angeles. I called it Fear and Longing in New York multiple times. It's Fear and Longing in Los Angeles, because it's the play on the Hunter S. Thompson book. But I'm sitting at my desk as I'm recording this, and I'm looking at the whiteboard where I actually have, this time around, TTA, a Canadian Werewolf in New York, a Quinny, then Stowaway, S-A, and I had F-A-L-I-N-Y, and I realized it should have been F-A-L-I-L-A. And that must have triggered the New York, so fear and longing in Los Angeles. I wonder if anyone besides me noticed that and was wondering about that. But in any case, that's it for this episode of the Stark Reflections podcast. I hope you enjoyed the article that I shared from Aaron Wright. I hope you found some value in that. If you do like this podcast, I do please encourage you to share it with a friend that you think would find value in the Stark Reflections podcast. So, again, this is the end of episode 144. And so until next week and next episode, this is Mark Leslie Lefebvre wishing you great writing and good Stark Reflections.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.